Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another episode here on the Free Market Foundation YouTube channel. Another podcast with me, Chris Hattingh, project manager here at the FMF. Thank you once again for joining me. I hope you enjoy these episodes, that you find them informative and useful, and that you're remembering to share them with your friends, your co-workers, anyone you think might be interested in the FMF's work. All the different things we're trying to influence and change in the country, everything that government is trying to keep us busy with, which is quite a lot, as I'm sure many of you are aware. This week I will just cover two topics for you. Not a very long episode, but just two important things I thought I would touch on and mention. The first one especially I think is quite important regarding the economic and I guess societal future of South Africa, if there is to be such a thing. So let's kick it off here with news of a tax revolt. Apparently, South Africans working abroad are in the front line of a looming tax revolt as they cut their tax ties with South Africa to avoid punitive taxes that come into force from next year. So that's from 2020. So the government, instead of trying to collect more taxes, maybe by lowering the tax level, thus getting more people in, or maybe using the taxes that they collect in a good manner, maybe not engaging in state capture, all these sorts of things. Instead of doing those right things, they're going to introduce more punitive measures to punish South Africans who have moved abroad and who live abroad and work abroad. So they're going to impose more punitive tax measures on those people. Now, to me, this is very counterintuitive. If you want to bring in more taxes, you either lower that tax threshold, as I mentioned a bit earlier, or you show the people, both local and foreigners, whether they're still living in the country or overseas, that you're putting their tax money to good use, not that you're squandering billions and millions. Let's say millions and billions rather, in taxpayer money on state capture projects, on personal luxury items, if you're a member in parliament, that sort of thing, that you're not driving a BMW, that maybe you consider driving a Volkswagen or a Corolla, one of those things, that you consider yourself a servant of the people and not above the people, that you consider yourself one of many South African citizens, not above South African citizens. To me, that's a much more common sense and progressive view of tax collection. And also just using the tax money in the way that you said you would. So for service delivery, for example, housing, water infrastructure, electricity infrastructure, that kind of thing. And also not dumping it into the SOEs such as SAA and Eskom, which simply can never turn around and which will never turn around. But we'll get onto that later. So this news about more punitive tax measures on South Africans living overseas in foreign countries doesn't really come as a surprise. I think the government at the moment is trying to hold on to things with sort of an iron grip, and when you try and hold on to sand and water too hard, simply more of it slips through your fingers. That's what's happening with tax collection and tax revenue at the moment. The government is it's sort of punishing itself in a roundabout way. It's trying to collect more taxes, but in the punitive measures which it enacts, it's going to collect less taxes in the future. According to a tax expert, this is giving SARS, quote, heart palpitations as it tries to make up billions of rands in revenue collection. For those of you listening overseas, SARS is the South African Revenue Service. Now, of course, this in a way makes me happy that it's giving them heart palpitations. I'm not morally opposed to tax as such, as I'm sure many South Africans are, probably 99.9% are in favor of paying their taxes. They think it's a good thing, but they would like to see those taxes used in a good manner, to be used to support those less well-off in society, to reinforce and build new infrastructure, to provide services in a wide range of areas. That sort of thing, to see their taxes used in a realistic, common sense, run-of-the-mill manner, not these extravagant projects that Parliament and many politicians try and use. None of that sort of thing. So, I'm happy that there's at least some questioning of paying taxes and that sort of thing. I'm in no way advocating that you shouldn't pay your taxes, because that is illegal, but it's up to each person at some point to decide how much or how little they want to continue supporting the South African government. It is, after all, your money. Government doesn't generate any of its own wealth. The only wealth or money that it has in its coffers is that which it collects through tax revenue, and without that it can't engage on any of the projects that it aims to do, for example the national health insurance. So by imposing more and more taxes and more punitive measures, it is in effect killing the golden goose that lays the golden eggs. Is it killing the goose that lays the golden eggs, or the golden goose that lays the golden eggs? Either way, you all know the analogy. So very backward thinking again from the government, unfortunately for them. The tax expert that I mentioned earlier, he's from Tax Consulting South Africa, Jean de Toy. He said the reality was that it was already too late to close the stable door. So in other words, the horse or horses have probably already bolted. People might have financially emigrated to places such as Dubai, Ireland, Mauritius. And the government can no longer collect any taxes from their income. And now this again is going to have that ripple effect in later years where they can, not that they're doing very well on service delivery at the moment in any case, but where they're going to be unable to deliver to greater and greater levels, and that's going to increase social strife, which we currently see. For example, the xenophobia that flared up last week in Johannesburg and Pretoria. So instead of showing people that they're going to use the tax money that they collect in a good, responsible manner, they're squandering those taxes, and then they're also increasing taxes on South Africans and also more punitive measures on foreigners. And this is all, backwards thinking to me, counterintuitive. I don't think it takes cognizance of South Africans' difficulties, especially poorer South Africans. It doesn't realize that it's driving away people who are productive and successful. And without their money, their investment, their taxes, the South African government can simply not do anything. So there needs to come some sort of point, if it hasn't already. It might indeed be too late to arrest the decline, but there needs to come a point where government realizes very strongly, and in its sort of heart of hearts, that it's being completely counterproductive in terms of tax revenue collection. So let's see if that signals a change. I think talk of a tax revolt could maybe inspire government to change some things, the way it talks, the way it acts, hopefully. Usually people act differently when something has an effect on their pocket. For example, they say when you're younger, you are more on the left side of the political spectrum, but then once you start being taxed and see where your tax money is going, that sort of thing, you lean more to the right, maybe more conservative, maybe, hopefully, not that it's either right or left. I consider libertarianism sort of on its own level, but you become a little bit more libertarian and you think the state should be a bit more limited in its spending and its control over people. So yeah, maybe now that government sees its pocket is being hit even harder and harder by people emigrating financially and physically, and people paying less and less taxes, maybe they'll change some of their policies, hopefully. Maybe I'm hoping for too much, but we'll see what happens. Alright, moving on to our next topic for this podcast. We've got news of SAA. Apparently, and I personally don't believe this, but this is news from Business Day this week, that SAA plan is set for takeoff. The government is reviewing the future of its 3 state-owned airlines, so that's South African Airways, South African Express, and Mango, and it is doing its best to stabilize those that can be made to work, Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan said this week. He said, and I quote, "We are looking at alternatives for all the state-owned airlines and will make announcements shortly." He said this on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum on Africa in Cape Town. He added that the government would decide in the next couple of weeks on options to resolve Eskom's debt crisis. Okay, we've heard about turnaround plan after turnaround plan after turnaround plan after turnaround plan for SAA for many years now. This is one of the FMF's big focuses, the privatization of SAA, the fact that government uses its limited tax revenue on bailing out SAA, despite its dismal performance every year, instead of using that money on service delivery for poorer people, is a moral travesty. I don't think the government should be involved in welfare, that sort of thing, big welfare spending in the first place. But if it is involved, and if it does collect that money, it should be using that for its intended purpose, not to bail out SAA. No matter how much money you throw at SAA, it's not going to turn around. And no matter who you appoint as the new CEO or the new board or anything like that, it's not going to turn around. It's massively difficult to run a profitable airline. People don't realize how hard it is to actually turn a profit as an airline. It's taken Emirates Airlines quite a while to display sort of the robustness that they're showing at the moment. Even British Airways, which is celebrating its centenary this year, there's talk now that I think this is the second day of their 2-day strike of the pilots, who are striking for higher wages. And BA, as famous as it is, it simply can't rely on its reputation only and its history to make a profit. It has to deliver every single day for its customers all around the world to deliver a profit. So to think that SAA can somehow dig itself out of the hole it is in, I think is highly unrealistic. We'll see what more details emerge from what Pravin Gordhan has said about alternatives. Maybe he means that SA Express and Mango will be collapsed into SAA. Excuse me. So that could be a good thing, sort of streamlining of services and sort of making the whole machine more lean, if you want to put it that way. Maybe that's what he has in mind. Maybe he has in mind letting people go in terms of retrenchments, which of course is going to cause a lot of upset with the trade unions, or the unions, the pilots unions and people like that, which will be a problem for them to navigate, for the government to navigate. But I think at the end of the day, SAA must simply be sold off in some way. I'm not sure if government will be willing to sort of write off that debt, put it that way. I'm hoping, I was always hoping, and the FMF has advocated for this in the past, that at least a majority stake in SAA be sold to a private partner. For example, Emirates, Ethiopian Airlines, maybe Etihad, although Etihad's also struggling, maybe Lufthansa. I don't know, take your pick. We keep the flag on the plane, the whole national pride thing. Let's not get upset about that thing, but keep the name SAA, but then have it run as a private company. That's the only way you're going to make an airline profitable. If as it's run as a private airline with minimal or no state interference, no backroom deals, no case of the minister of whatever persuasion he might be deciding that his friends are running the airline, his or her friends are running the airline. And I think then you'll see a proper turnaround. But at the moment, every day that SAA keeps flying, it's sucking away more money from poorer South Africans, which could be used on service delivery for them. And that's obviously a very sad thing. So at least Pravin Gordhan has said what I consider now to be the right thing. We'll see if it actually results in something. Maybe, maybe not, but that's the latest news we have on the SAA front. So let's see what happens. All right, I'll end on that note. Thank you all very much once again for joining me. I hope you found this particular episode informative. Please remember to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Please like the video and share it on your various social media platforms with your friends and your co-workers. We have an event coming up tomorrow evening, the Economic Freedom of the World 2019 edition launch. So that should be quite exciting. We'll come to you guys with all the news from that, all the latest numbers, where South Africa ranks, all of that sort of thing. And then we'll be back on Friday, I'm sure, with another Free Marketeers podcast, me and myself, Martin, and Mpiaki. And then we'll talk to you guys again soon. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Wednesday and the rest of your week. And thank you once again for joining me. Bye.